Why is ballot key to the app?
The app is topical. Ballot is key because it endorses the app.
Does the app defend material withdrawal of troops from the one region?
What are troops?
The app
challenges. The app has defined military presence as sonics and withdrawals the way that we use sonics.
Does it have material implications?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. What are sonics and how do they
Well, sonic is sound. Our argument is that the way that sonics are constructed right now is along a color line between the east and the west, and this differentiation between the two allows for forms of violence to happen. For example, the Korean War being labeled as a forgotten war or civil war instead of the United States justifying intervention. How the way it's used in wartime military actions, for example, translators choosing words that would incite violence rather than peace, because other people are not able to.
Do you derive offense off of the storytelling of the app?
The storytelling?
Or the performance of the app?
What's the performance of the app? The app has offense because you endorse our method of retranslation.
Okay, what does it look like for an embodied story? Like, what's the difference between reading it in Chinese or reading it in, just defending the withdrawal?
Well, reading it in Mandarin is how we withdraw sonics because our argument is that is how we reshape the sonic color line, and that is good. So
is reading it in one language enough to access app solvency? Why is that specifically key? Why can't you just read it in another language and that challenges sonics?
Well, you can. That's what the app does.
Why do you need the ballot?
Well, the ballot to endorse the app method. Well, the app is topical. It withdraws the sonic color line, which is good under the.
It withdraws sonic color line through the reading of language.
Yeah. Because we have defined military presence as sonics, so that's good.
Okay, sure. On your. How do you make a pessimistic claim about Asians? No. Okay, sure. What does it look like to challenge language? Is it just the reading of it?
Well, we provided an example of a way to challenge language. I don't think it's restrictive. There can be other ways to do so, but the app argument is that the way that we should challenge language is that we should challenge the false assumptions that language inspires.
What does it look like for a story to be embodied?
Our argument is that whenever it goes to mass media, those people are more likely to paper over truth claims. Our example is whenever Vincent Chen died, the news media papered over him as someone who is totally helpless, while in reality, Vincent Chen fought back.
Okay, sure. What does it look like? Does racial exclusion happen just through differential in linguistics? Is that how racial exclusion happens?
Yeah.
Is that the root cause?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know what you mean by root cause. It is a cause.
It is a cause of racial exclusion.
Yeah, the sonic color line is a cause of racial exclusion. Yes.
Okay, sure. I'll take rep. Is it 4 or 5?
5.
Okay.
Thinking that.
Okay, 442 left. Order is 5 off the case. Can everyone understand?
Yeah.
Alright, should be set. Let me know whenever it's good.
You said 4 off?
5 off.
5 off. Okay, just got it. I'm good.
Our interpretation of the affirmative middle are regard our offense of the resolution being access substantially to military presence by station of after region resolved with the colon said legislative action for 1 resolved to make a firm decision rules come from resolution by a legislative body question legislative body United States is the federal government most predictable Mitchell 15 certain parts of the United States prefers the federal government is consistently reduced means to make less Rogers Thesaurus 13 reduced to make less military presence basis broad consensus Joachim 11 military presence versus establishment of military base violations the same though have to affirm their method of resistance through linguistics which is distinct as executive shillings about negative fairness compassion matter talks and rule from negation debates and innately competitive which creates incentive for teams to retrieve from controversy force and negative first characters that in the debate, which evacuates the detailed evidence and detailed preparation dating back to intrinsic debate as opposite discussions from negation, optical states for considered and strategy over regards to the debate's pedagogical values, which debates all together often with and learn to point out false and prime positions, proper or probability, they can also activities, they can recognize views, which can only do the fact to balance fairness within inside the Wednesday. It's different to way that every single fact that the top prevents in-depth research and engagement with necessary access to all their education. 3, they know up to any other activities of your office, reading because education public seeking gives the platform to only defending prepare arguments, prepare resolution reputations, makes better applicants, reduce failure presence, and reduce failure presence, and affirm like linguistics as a sort of a contention that prevents aggression, which will be later on in the one and see topicalities and positions to go to have debates about crowd worse, it's a modest limitation on single medium action for activity that has a goal power convincing that they were right, which is the idea that's violent paradigm issues. 1, who's committing interest topicalities, question models, and maintain that have to practically justified. 2, the way the case like real remedies the truth, claims are contested, which means proves false source only when it case because we can't engage with drop the beer, can't drop the money. See, on to the next off. Vote negative to endorse studies of drawing sufficient present West Asian fact for region. Calculates vote the calculates form critical pleasure, the website's access ownership and survival strategy, integration scale cumulative basis for affirmation time and neoliberal property based models survive man 95 measures can improve originality ready for having like a critical autobiography vision by progress can be doubled as dead collision destroys authoritative textual audio also destroys illustration as part of cancellation oneself an author and putting on authorship trying to make it makes you truly less reposition impossible. On the next topic when yours entered when he seeks stuff for called the ballot clarify you should vote negative people when he sees good idea because they have no offense from the ballot. On like the next topic counterclaim when yours entered absent reading against a fellow Asian causing psychological violence to force you to get our identity something that outweighs any preference maybe any bird you know what you're doing was bad and did anyways means linked your advocates all the ways of violence and talks about to next author their idea about hacking resolution debate and can challenge capitalist fear few captures false butter of some type of consumption solve identity from the market's contradiction the struggle society or life by attaining the exclusion discourse of outward change becomes evident discourse simulating validity social ideal late modern society reconciles tension by simulating by forming possibly alternative they can cope with fundamental problems through rational change provide degree of experience lots in city debates as a rare pedagogical they were contested for organizational patterns with the movements for organic democratic accountability that causes moving citation killer and ATL movements are connected with this debates concerning the validity of longevity animosity people who every interest that collaboration and relationships that were difficult to build out from structures their responsibilities mechanism for leadership accountability the only have no leaders prison horizontalism occupy but always have leaders who want to decide how this was a resource of use and to accept the Obama administration as individually determined but the leadership of the movement doesn't mean they can only have no more democracy being like what a tribe the absence of debate as a main project for summary where they absolutely feel with an exchange for a ballot which is a symbolic capitalist economy that turns case produces replication politics claim to 22 closest macroeconomic progression serves as catalyst of political inflection performance that's just supposed dicey dystopian logical utopian performances holding delusion seem to occupy in a vacuum the great utopians for advanced to aggressive and erasing history is not just a place representative also a place where representation occurs alternative is firm the Communist Party burns 18 revolution railroad base buildings found in workplace workplace and units community self-defense and mutual aid and the way the legal capacity launching revolutionary uprising savage modeling on the use of force in the working class direction economy according to democratic ecological scientific plan institutions outside against and displace the state and by the Christian base betters offensive organizing your gains but human revolution has been they're talking about person being like the government authoritative capitalist politics even call socialist some case probable about when they seek a statistical alternative anything that's arbitrary it's also immense appeals voting machines was lit and it's not contestable just by like and racism and sexism PL world peace and movements all of which are good performing advocacy by zero ground in the topic all you have to leave consequences and plan lines to determine if actively impacts politics versus particularly that fosters engagement for favoring arguments and content that practice and knowledge which turns a freedom competition turn their dreams their dreams as a debater and their nerve overcoming perpetual cycle objectification for a public performance spectator benefit James 2 counter resilience overcoming must be accomplished in a visible consumable manner overcoming side effective labor productive which is the public performance and resilience discourse and impediment caused by the damage wrought by the white male gaze necessary for agency recognition resilience discourse objectification means overcoming spectator feels performance individual affirming into therapeutic negatives since resilience requires someone to overcome the action trenches of harmony resolving part that gives ends feedback in the oppression James 3 because the last one doesn't occur too much to review or what happens through investment into all the Amador did we get back process one effective tools so that I always get a wider in my back so I get back across resilience common task successes and failures I'm sorry this anti trying to producing the back says mutually intensive lose preparedness onto presumption page but negative presumption when it's effective there's no bound and affirming the debate around slow since and nobody moderates influence especially not to using round 2 but voting negative as well as a procedural impacts for 3 debate representing a message around capable social change activities have analyzed debate with all applicable with their acoustic community access for opinions not just about this assumption really fixing the harmful deposition not provoked by human sense or rational thinking studies to exploitation that it won't change deficits and leads people who lose to them which fosters resilience against them and negative subjectivity to the preemption their presumption that with the debate alerts the academy versus separate to pre and third strategy that ensures that rebel respected for inherent the burden of the fact is proved departure from status quo to the third degree and out of matters violence that calls the gate and psychological balance supports the game people's ongoing survival strategies by trying to affirmation critical strategies within debate shows up real world applications to the crowd groundability when actualizable solvency 6 retraction when he has already been introduced and no longer has connection to acting require the ally commodifies or syntax returns absent attachment their ability to win debates is dependent on continuing to values with me they're vested in maintaining that balance when balance pursuit like a the goal of individuals on broader subject information is white noise individuals don't factor subjectivity the African never solved back to reading whole press absent the base space and B they're asking to go over the same day so those people read this out on the note of the methods now we're turning into attempt to use balance to make debate more accessible one it leaves you a role with the negative only ground to say that debate should not be more accessible it's just nothing else with Hobson is forced to be non-responsive for offense both sides is wrong too valid sending the next time does nothing for debate matter you to balance courtesy for social movements or to combating linguistic terms is really unsustainable cause cycle of language is lost in a middle way see thousands of zone responding to a judgment and validates a hollow validation type has political energy and draws them to opposite views of the academy, but negative to find affirmation club sign. Considers the role of the critic, composition, communicating humanized objects of investigation, critic, activated, and change discourse, instrumental. There is suggestion that outlaw computers do not academic or contradicts the destructive figure on a failure argument making, speaking of the street solidity as classroom shooting as list and protest more object for analysis, the academy, without addressing whether the critics should be having in the first place or review members of the problem to read surveillance, perhaps read prescription list of legitimacy, and the effective destruction side on energy and academy practice. So the thesis for recognition in the first place, material changes, material opportunities, conditions of the critic is focusing on the hidden and rendering incomprehensible trait, cover discourse and object to analyze and risk subjecting the ideas and dominant and power relations of the academy. Good for us.
Okay. Sorry, now what's the link?
The link to CAP.
Yeah.
The link to CAP is that you are accommodating the resolution by deriving external offense from reading a different language in like the performance of the app. So
okay, so the link to CAP is being not topical.
Yes, like
okay,
it's,
so
it's talking about testing different organizational strategy. You disrupt the app through individual instances.
Wait, I just want to clarify. So if I win the app is topical, there's no link to CAP.
No, that's not our word. We're saying that we're saying that you disrupt the debate space through individual affirmations.
How does the app disrupt the debate space?
Like you're saying that by reading the app in a different language, by reading the app in Chinese, you affirm like linguistic differences, but that is not an organizational movement that can be challenged.
Okay, so the link is because it is not a revolution. So
yeah, we're saying that we're saying that affirming the Communist Party is individually better for combating the
okay, so it's a link of omission. All right, let's go to then why doesn't every policy app link to like literally every single app in the world that is not the alternative when all those things also link?
No, we're saying that your critique of the world is that
if
you affirm it through individual instances, but a different organizational movement, like a blueprint for change, not individual instances of affirmation.
Okay, so if the app is not an individual instance of where we need to change something, then it doesn't link.
Well, if you derive offense from reading in a different language, it's an individual instance of affirmation.
I disagree. Okay, framework, what's the violation?
Framework, you violate because you derive, number one, you derive external offense. Number two, you violate the shotgun 11 card.
What's external offense?
Like through the performance of the app, they're reading in a different language. Like
why is that not external?
Because you are not the United States federal government. The United States federal government refers to the government.
Why am I not the United States federal government?
You haven't read a definition that says you are.
Oh wait, so why should we prefer definitions? Like who
because it's the most predictable and provides a stasis.
How are they predictable? Like I think I should.
Because we predetermined. It's in the resolution. The United States federal government ought to.
Okay, but how do we determine whether or not definition is predictable? Like what might be predictable for you is not the case for me.
Well, it has legal grounding.
Okay, so why should predictability derive from legality?
Because we're debating the actions of the United States federal government. Textuality, we agreed to on a predetermined resolution.
I'm asking specifically about legal definitions. Why should we prefer legal definitions, and why do you claim those are the most predictable?
Because it is a stasis point for the resolution that we agreed upon pre-round. Like
okay, I understand the resolution is a stasis point. Why does that also imply
the United States federal government implies a
point?
legal definition because they have the authority to remove bases. The United States federal government should therefore be defined by legal bases that have consensus over what the government does.
That seems to be circular. Okay. No problem. The app against reading against an Asian, what causes psychological violence? Why couldn't you have just read this one and see?
Well, that causes psychological violence because you're forcing us to negate our identity.
What part of the app makes you negate your identity?
Like, the neck has the burden of joinder, we're disproving the app. Like, we obviously have to say even the reading of the app in Chinese is bad, but just disproving that.
Wait, so what part about reading CAP-K caused psychological violence to you?
Well, that's a different method, but we're saying that the
presentation so you should read stuff that does not cause psychological violence.
It still does, because the reading of the app, we just provided a different method, but you still read the app.
Okay, no problem. I'm sending the doc. It is app and offset in order. Wait, actually, yeah, I think it's off in order. If it's not, it's like one of the counterclaims are like switched or something. And it is sent.
Do you know what counterclaims are switched or what the order of the counterclaims are?
It's plagiarism, ballot pig, failure. Is that the order?
Yeah,
okay, no, that's just order. Also, not reading the card.
Did you just send the one you see again?
It's at the very bottom.
Oh. You're not reading cards?
Not reading the card on a case.
But you already used some
Yeah.
points. Okay. Okay.
Anyone not good? Imperialism is structured by the Sonic Hollow and false equivalency between Christianity, civilization, East West, and most of the divine rationalities of warfare and imperialism lines against non-Western subject to African dream, reaching the military president against the empire by challenging falsely deconstructing tropes against allegiance by rationalized warfare and military future that happens to highest their debate is not separate from a critique of semiotics and the atmospheric linguistic debate whose could it use social relations that punishes the human minorities should be preserved its effect towards all their offensive education and famous. They say effective labor, it is good, we should labor and challenge the Stalin color line. They say intrinsic violence, it makes no sense, solving for violence does not cause violence itself. The academy critique on case commodification, yeah, academic markets are inevitable. If it's a shit story was speaking over by media to pursue political images, conceded evidence. The question is whether or not I should use my story for my purpose or other people use my stories for their gain. Academic science is worse. Asian storytelling enables future generations to see alternative model of debate and action. Forces to disappearance means that future students have no blueprint to work from navigating a hostile space. Perception argument 1 conceded that Rob's shaped reality, sound shapes subjectivities, conceded evidence about sound as influences key cognitive activity and constructive political realities. 20 see whose translation is literally changing their perception of military presence. Inserted our evidence. Second, we are topical vote after we win, it's a good idea. Third, we don't have to win spillover after because what we see is good for our psyches and our subjectivity to refuse linguistic militarization. Skip the Asian American card homogenization. Decide to say it's all fallacy. When you see descriptive scope, not saying that homogenization is good. Our arguments, anything that is not the West, seems our opinion justifies violence. Our alternatives never being noticed. He analyzed these West psychology machines and mind skills on noted framework. 1, we got to win the case. Kitty tested for models correct. He only does advocacy. After saying we still used to war. And second, I need to want to see is a sonic of refusal against U.S. military president, which is what is he can be retranslated to resist military forms of meaning. For example, the conflation of race of nation. Instead, we embrace it with embodied definitions. We will critique their form of predictability. Entirety of cross-examination was embarrassing. Legalism as a basis of definition of quality is not intrinsic with a product of linguistic imperialism. Few implications. A is predictability for minorities, not based on legal jargon, but lived experiences of communal violence. The rest being announced in advance does not prove that there's a correct interpretation of it. The fact that my parents are from Taiwan, play Shanxi as a child, forced to take those classes, inevitably means that military presence is always going to be Sundays to me. Second is alienation. This Asian debaters were first to subdue their effective relationship with the resolution. With institutional reaction, shun which culminates in burnout and resentment, which minority students are taught to destroy themselves because their orientation and texts are wrong, not just because they're unpredictable to the white man. Outweighs material harm, accessibility, since when you see Engenhaus to cause anxiety and depression. 3, counter-interpretation, just my affirmative self-limits. In ground 4 is canonization. The negative resistance of game-based framework is the sole reason why we're doing debate. Ignores ulterior motives. I want to see is the reason why we come to this place to frame and produce a racialized order in a community that markets alternative modes of expression that encodes K debaters as criminal and deviant, which produces pathology, impedance, microaggressions, and here and now, which is fickle evidence to counterplan plagiarism, no net benefit, massive solid deficits, attributes are often from our reading of the resolution that is embodied, which means that plagiarism cannot be embodied, which means that they cannot solve permutation, depose, seal, back, net benefit, is more sealing, valid, pick, answer, perception are all solvency deficits, yellow, 1, massive solvency deficit, justifies never reading embodied arguments against another H debater's definition of homogenization because assumed we all interpret and experience violence the same way. Second, nothing, how can it negate the act, not your identity, nothing intrinsic to absence, yet the deny who you are. Third, no impact, any impact will affect you. For example, a policy act that says extinction happens, you can say that causes psychic violence to negate extinction because you don't want to die. Obviously, that's nonsensical because debate is a place where you should test ideas. Capitalism, one framework we should get the way the academics are competing solely conventionally, the performance of all the forms of structure of the party machines. Any offensive movement is first casual. Second, in case always a black part 70, but it is not stopping extinction for voting out this. This is like linguistic imperialism to stop the culture of age 70, either include the act. So I think which means that it is already the Afro doesn't make sense, which means they lead to all our offense. So link does not make sense. Use with embarrassing any form of refusal with links in a link of omission, which means that the alternative has to be being able to overcome the links or it fail anyways. So just part of the line argument, permutation, plutonic, that benefit, attuning to sonic steeper, struggle session, democratic hearing, and forms of communication within the party, which means that sonics are inevitable, otherwise no one shows up, which means that a solvency deficit to organize and beat time frame. That benefit, no part, Communist Party exists outside of no date, Acaranda, North National, no Marxist organization, US American Party, US Revolutionary Movement, Acaranda, development, struggles of nationalities, founded original Marxist, some of the Catholic Party, absence of German Communist Party, Acaranda, which can make the living conditions, partly get together, Chinese use it, educate, organize, and create campaigns around community block, Puerto Rican, black and white, and the white. Didn't read the C card, but who knows?
formula. Okay. Or it's gonna be T case. Can you understand?
Yeah.
Is everything good?
No.
Is there a doc?
No.
Okay. I'm good.
Where are you starting on case?
What?
Where are you starting on case?
It's T case.
Where are you starting on case?
It's gonna be just top down in the order of the
Okay.
On T, our interpretation of the absence of the hypothetical implication of the topical plane, only textual reading of the resolution of the hypothetically implemented provides a predictable basis for debate. That means that the U.S. federal government is the government in D.C., and that means that military presence is troops and basis of the most predictable stasis for the resolution. The paper like offense and debates a game where both here debates against pursue questions like T comes first, and prior to winning any offense, two reference why we switch sides, why there was being a winner loser, and why there are structural rules. We're going for fairness as an external impact of T. Topicality is a good norm to preserve because it maintains a stasis for disagreement and prevents after being able to pick a new and biased topic every single debate with mates. The next unsure will have to rejoin until they show up to the round one. It's intrinsically activity has a fundamental two loops of competition. Proof of the fact that a tournament asking for ballots, cutting cards, timing speeches, and not clipping. Accepting those rules means that it's intrinsic to the wit condition of the world where the app can do anything and get a ballot for suggesting a better sort of advocacy through linguistic interpretation, not tied to the bounds of which means that the judge can go on anything arbitrary, regardless of what you think is valuable. Ask while you prepare and ask to win instead of asking the judge to flip a coin. Two fairness features every affirmative fact channeling, competitive sentence, and deep classified scholarship. Being a better argues is the only true impact to debate, but it's impossible to leave debate with a better understanding of anything the way he has when everyone is boundless affirmation when the neck is not prepared to contradict anything that they said. Only the way the case of winning the case is completely nonsensical. T is a procedural question of whether or not the affirmative model debate is independently good allows us to engage. Weighing the case is the equivalent of saying like nuke war outweighs conditionality. We have to first justify their model for getting access to the offense underneath. That means the T is a gateway issue, and for them to win any offense that they have to win the counter and interpret independently. Their model is terrible. The idea that arguments or like T can cause violence is a completely untenable model of debate because the neck inevitably has to disagree with the app due to the burden of rejoining the adversarial nature of debate, means the neck have to say that as an idea. A framework is just a point of contestation or disagreement, making debates referendum on these sort of psychological violence that Nathan really goes for in the one area is bad because every decision has to include someone, i.e. whoever loses, which puts the judge in a position of deciding whose psychological violence matters more. This link turns our argument because views debate as a solely fairness-based game, divest the balance ability to cause violence, on like the I mean stuff, on like the critique predictability. So legalism is not imperialism, it's just a stasis of which you start the debate, which is good for clash insurance, all their offense. We can't engage with a method that affirms that it causes us to affirm false positive. They've infinitely shifty and self-serving arbitrary definitions. Everybody can say that that military presence means something else. So having a starting point for discussion is intrinsically valuable, specifically military specificity. We have the only evidence from you as legal professors and it defines USFG and military presence in the context of the resolution. Evidence from a military context matters because it's a whole different realm from civilian. Not only military courts have jurisdiction over military, so users throw out definition for recipients and infinite recontextualization. They say that the clash is iteratively key to all their offense, and the iteration of perfect representation doesn't magically change our mindsets or doesn't magically disrupt the semiotic reading of the app. The 180 records all sorts. The 180 records all sorts of refinement requires sparring partners, which locks in a definitional point to be able to actually engage with the app. Their definitions are incredibly shifty and arbitrary, which means that we never actually engage and doesn't wait, and that we don't get the process of opposition. It's a model that trenches dogmatism, the base-based absent rigorous contestation by weighing the consequences of the app. Intimidate debaters to be good as critics, but have no idea what to do once we leave the debate stage, which means why it's valuable to have a starting point, which is the most predictable stasis for debate. Also, they say that there's no correct version. Military presence is always in sonics, but no, our interpretation is correct and precision is good for stasis of contestation, which is a prerequisite for them to access any of their options. They have no reasonable counter definition, so therefore those definitions are completely arbitrary. Do not conflate for all like the alienation. Do not conflate this sort of procedural and structural fairness. One can be resolved in the ballot, and one other cannot. Otherwise, debate becomes dangerous and violent form of bullying, which forms of structural unfairness, which outweighs others, placing the judge in an inappropriate role. Next, intrinsic debate is a game inequities necessary to see the activity. Next, it's a meta constraint, all sort of evaluation. They can see that your arguments can see fairness, as you assume they will be allowed fair and frame procedural impacts through a lens of optimization. We don't need to win, then they make the game impossible, just relatively less effective. Lastly, on the mechanization, they say that encodes K debate as bad, it doesn't encode T debate as bad. They can't derive offense off of the reading of the linguistics of the 1AC future debate. Also, the T debate independently solve all their offense. They can critique the position that the 1AC takes later as on the negative as sort of linguistic imperialism, which is independently solves all their offense. They were way too on the switch debate, which means they should independently voting on it as a reason for their model to survive this sort of debate. Acts like Harrison debasing and drones have all proves that you can critique the state from the point of the negative, which proves how the app's reading is not intrinsic to the ballot. Next, onto the cap, terms are as a competition, not unique offense for the go to case. First, they say the app's highlights are not separate from the chaos semiotics, but independently fairness is a procedural question of the reading of the app. The pre is a gateway issue for these sort of offers the app can actualize. It is the most predictable stasis. For example, apps shift from every single round, but having T as a procedural question for evaluating offense means that every under app is subject to the interpretation, which means it is the outweighs on scope. Next, they say the affective labor is good. We're not going for that, but only the academic science thing. We're going for the method is a dissat. They go for the fact that rep shape reality and that sounds like subjectivity, and then it's good for their psyches to read the app, but they drop the method dissat adherence to the burden of ass root departure from the status quo, which means that there's no valid. The reason why the app valid matters to violence and possible to gain psychologically violence and forces us to negate people's ongoing survival strategies. The app derives often to reading as a survival strategy in the round, which is inherently bad and forces us to negate people's psyches, which means that the judge has to inevitably make a decision about people's psychological violence, which is a terrible model for doing so. Therefore, you should just be voting on the T shell because it produces fairness. The central and nexus question of your ballot. We're not saying that. The next they say that rep shape reality of a murder was responsive. They drop the individual rounds, can't say objectivity. It just becomes white noise in every single round. You don't remember what happened at Harvard round 2, but you definitely do remember these sort of procedural norms that we set for debate, which means that concedes the fact that the reading of the app is bad. Next, they say that the app's method is that the app tests a Roger subconstantly packaged project, which is a form of neoliberalism. They say that this map for reading is a counter method of the question of whether to engage in liberation before they access the impacts is worse or always conceded. All of the stuff on the felons court, we're going for its independent dissat to the app's reading method, and you lose as a link, lose a response because the app can't do anything. There's a massive modification. The reading of non-TS versus being read the app over and over. They say that they don't bait anti-Asian violence, but the reading of the app causes a commodification that causes that cycle of Asian violence to continue because they wanted to sustain it through, oh, this is a good card for my 1AC, but that causes that violence to continue because they can continue to derive offense off of it, which is why it is intrinsically bad method. And they drop the method that T is a clean page. You vote on fairness because the only intrinsic impact of the ballot.
Good for Carl. Oh, sorry right now. Did he answer counter only my app? So what's the answer?
Yeah, it was like individual strategies. Like, it doesn't change.
What? How is that? Okay, the answer to counter-interpretation only my app on T framework, what was it?
Counter-interpretation was weighing the case is nonsensical. Like, it's not a topical moral question.
Okay, order is just anyone on good? App challenges military president Rishari Koloran through retranslation of Mandarin that ties words for meaning. For example, being cannot be written without its ties to weapon. That challenges the Paris false equation. For example, completion of Christianity, US civilization, Korean War, forgotten war, sanitizes violence. They say the judges negate, concede it is inevitable. Every app sells some type of violence. For example, extinction apps say that you have to affirm, otherwise people is going to die, but they have conceded that using it personalized is good because commodification is inevitable, but at least I get to use it for my own gain. They say that individual rounds can't change subjectivity. Sorry, you just dropped a carded piece of evidence that says sounds and influences the way that we think in real time. We're the only ones with carded evidence inserted inside the 1A, which means that even if they can't remember the individual rounds, our argument is that individual rounds shape our subjectivity one at a time, which is the reason why you should vote affirmative. Externally, not winning is a violation of T framework is the reason why you should vote app, because our app is topical, because we have defined military presence to a way that is embodied to us, and there's a reason to vote affirmative to the T framework. We get to win the case. T is a procedural, but that assumes that app is not topical. We need affluence to prove why it's not, which means that app comes less to be prior. They only indict the FTC, not the warrant of the case. I'm going for IB. We only defend the implementation of the resolution. The only question of this debate should be whether or not their interpretation of the resolution is good. Their top level for meaning issues, unpredictability is arbitrary, which means that there's no differential for any of their offense. The equal definitions are not intrinsic. They claim that it's more precise. They cannot explain why, even if they can predict them. That does not mean that I can predict them, because I interpreted the topic through my subjectivity. The fact that my parents are from immigrants from Taiwan, I was forced to take ESL classes, etc., means that Sonics was always the way that military presence was enforced upon me. Winning through legalistic interpretation is unpredictable and should end the debate. For example, even if they win every other standard such as limits. For example, if the answer to the counter-interpretation only my app was that my app is arbitrary. It proves that even if their interpretation might create limits, might create ground, it does not resolve any of their impacts if it is unpredictable, or you can just vote on the counter interpretation only might add because it's the only one that sets the most limits and the most ground, and they have infinite time to prepare for it. At worst, it makes all their impacts inevitable because it means that there will never be a world where everyone meets falsely asked because the interpretation has never been universally predictable. Think about how deep has been around forever. People still read chaos because they have a different relationship with the topic, which means that voting negative will never rectify abuse or set norms if they have no solvency. But voting affirmative has that our method is good, that we can disrupt the space. The alienation decide was conceded, universalized the interpretations of resolution to form a wide cultural erasure that teaches Asian debaters to distrust themselves and internalize Western linguistics at the expense of their lived experiences, which is the Engenham evidence, which is external evidence for why our model debate is good. They force us to constantly labor to fit the image of white debate community coheres to be met with backlash with the uniquely exhausting form of self-regulation that manifests in depression and heart attack. Those material harms massively outweigh any terminal impact they have on fairness to education because it makes debate impossible. It comes like super hard. There's no point in resuming fairness to education. No minority can participate in it, which means that we control the internal link to all their forms of oppression. They say suicide debate, it does not solve. Even if we can switch sides and we can do things on the negative, you're still bound by whatever norms that you want. 1AR theory, etc. all proves that they're still bound on it. T-firm still proves that they're bound on what the 1AC can do. Our argument is that forcing Asian debaters for even just one round to interpret the topic the way that you want it, that's not embodied for me, is something that causes cultural erasure, causes heart attacks that with carded evidence, which massively outweigh any risk of your impact. Look, if predictability is arbitrary, they have no impact, even if they set grounds and limits, because the question you should be asking is why are those grounds and limits good for me, even if it's good for them. There's an external dissent that was dropped. It should be game over. Vote out.
Good debate.
Good debate.